This is my land. You do not understand. This land is ours.
When Ezekiel Carter, a proud black farmer, discovers that his powerful HOA has been secretly digging tunnels beneath his land to seize it, his life spirals into a storm of systemic racism, intimidation, and betrayal, from the first unease on his farm, to whispered warnings in the barbershop, to uncovering buried blueprints of corruption. Ezekiel faces bureaucratic stone, courtroom battles, and threats meant to silence him. Yet with his mother's wisdom and his community's awakening, he turns evidence into a weapon of truth, igniting fiery confrontations at town meetings, surviving dangerous chases through tunnels, and finally exposing the board's web of lies before the world, collapsing their house of cards and proving that while paper walls and steel doors can be broken, the roots of dignity and land, carried through generations, remain unyielding and eternal. The morning sun spilled gold across the Carter farm, lighting every furrowed row with a kind of quiet reverence. Ezekiel Carter leaned against his shovel, sweat already running down his neck, and let his gaze wander across the fields. This land had known his father's hands, his grandfather's sweat, and now it bore his name. Every stalk, every fence post felt like a heartbeat passed down through generations. But the peace fractured when the SUVs rolled up the dirt road. 3 of them, shiny, black, and out of place against the red clay. Ezekiel set down his shovel and wiped his brow, as men and women in pressed suits stepped out like they owned the horizon. "Mr. Carter," one of them called, smiling too wide, a tall man in a navy jacket, gold watch glinting in the sun. "Board members from the Hillside Community Association, we'd like to have a word." Ezekiel's jaw tightened. He'd heard whispers. He knew the HOA had been buying land, swallowing neighbors' farms, but no one had warned him they'd show up here, uninvited. He walked closer, boots pressing into the soil like he was reminding the earth of his claim. "What's this about?" he asked evenly. The man in the jacket glanced at the others before speaking. "Opportunity. We're expanding the community. Your farm, fine land, I'll admit it's right where the new development could thrive. Golf courses, luxury homes. We'd like to make you an offer." Ezekiel folded his arms. "Not interested." A woman with pearl earrings gave a practiced laugh. "Mr. Carter, you haven't even heard the price." "I don't need to. This land isn't for sale." Their smiles stiffened, silence stretched. Then the man with the watch leaned in, voice lower. "You might want to reconsider. Keeping up a property like this, not easy. Taxes rise, accidents happen. We're just looking out for community progress." Ezekiel's eyes narrowed. Progress for who? The group shifted uncomfortably, but none denied the edge in his question. Finally, the woman sighed. "We'll give you time to think, but understand this isn't personal, it's business. Developments bring value. Your farm doesn't quite fit the vision." He heard what she didn't say. "Your black-owned farm doesn't fit our vision." The SUVs pulled away, dust choking the air. Ezekiel stood alone, fists clenched, the silence of the field pressing heavy. The narration cut sharp through his thoughts. This was how it always began. Smiles, offers, then pressure, then erasure. His father had warned him, "They'll come for the land, son, because the land is proof we survived." Ezekiel looked back over the fields, the rows shining in the sunlight. "They'll have to bury me first," he muttered. And the soil, dark and steady, seemed to answer. The first sign came 3 days later. Ezekiel was hauling a bale of hay when his boot sank deeper than it should. He stopped, frowning. The ground felt soft, not the usual firmness of his family's soil. He knelt and pressed a hand against the earth. It gave under his palm like a sponge. "Strange," he muttered. That night, lying in bed, he swore he heard it low rumbling, faint vibrations traveling through the foundation of the farmhouse, like a train running underground. He sat up, heart pounding, but when he stepped outside, the night was still. The crickets sang, the stars burned. The ground, though, seemed to hum beneath his boots. The next morning, his neighbor, Mr. Davis, leaned over the fence. Davis was white, mid-60s, with sun-leathered skin and a nervous habit of chewing toothpicks. "You've been hearing things at night?" Davis asked, squinting. Ezekiel stopped raking. "What kind of things?" "Engines, trucks, lights moving across the ridge after dark." He spat the toothpick into the dirt. "Looks like construction crews. But hell if I know why they'd be out here this late." Ezekiel felt a knot form in his gut. "You telling me they're digging at night?" Davis nodded slowly. Wouldn't surprise me. HOAS got money. Got lawyers too. They don't ask permission. They just do. That evening, Ezekiel walked the edge of his land with a flashlight. The beam caught odd mounds of fresh dirt, small piles where no animal had dug. The grass around them looked disturbed, pressed down by heavy boots or tires. He crouched, ran a hand over the soil, and felt the loose crumble, new to new. A sound drifted faint from beneath metal striking stone, echoing. His chest tightened. They weren't just trespassing. They were under him. The next day, Ezekiel drove to the Hillside HOA office, a sleek, glass-front building with manicured hedges, a fortress of bureaucracy. Inside, a receptionist with a stiff smile looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to see the board," Ezekiel said firmly. She tapped her keyboard. "Board meetings are scheduled. You can file a request." "I'll wait," he said. Minutes stretched. Finally, the same man in the navy jacket from before Mr. Collins, the HOA president, emerged from a side office. Well, Mr. Carter." His smile was all teeth. "What brings you here?" Ezekiel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You digging under my land." The room fell quiet. Collins chuckled, but it was sharp, dismissive. "Digging under your land? I think you've been spending too much time in the sun, my friend. I've seen the soil, heard the machines." Another board member, a heavy-set man with slicked-back hair, leaned against the wall. "Maybe your imagination's running wild. Farms do that. Land shifts, ground settles. Perfectly natural." Ezekiel's fists curled at his sides. "You think I don't know my own land? My boots have walked that soil longer than you've been breathing." The woman with pearl earrings appeared from her office, arms folded. "Mr. Carter, please. These accusations are absurd. Why would the association waste resources digging tunnels? Honestly, it sounds paranoid." Her tone was honeyed, but the word paranoid stung. "Gaslighting, sweet and sharp." Collins stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Ezekiel could hear. "Let me give you some advice. Don't stir trouble where there isn't any. People start thinking you're difficult. Difficult folks get fines, get audited, end up in court. And courts don't like stubborn men." Ezekiel met his stare, unflinching. "You can threaten me all you want. I know what I heard." Collins' smile tightened. "Then, I suppose we'll see how long your little farm stands. Good day, Mr. Carter." Ezekiel walked out, anger burning hotter with each step. The narration rose in his mind, bitter as iron. This is how they win. Make you doubt yourself. Make you question your own eyes, your own ears. They don't need to prove you wrong. They just need to convince others you're crazy. But Ezekiel knew what he had seen. Fresh dirt, hollow ground, the hum of machines beneath his father's soil. He stood on his porch that night, staring out across the fields. Somewhere under there, men in hard hats and board members in suits were cutting into his inheritance like it was nothing more than rock and clay. His father's words echoed in memory. "The land don't lie. Son, listen to it. Protect it." Ezekiel clenched his jaw. "They think I'll fold. Not me. Not ever." The ground shivered beneath him again, faint but real, and this time, he did not doubt it. The bell above the barbershop door jingled as Ezekiel stepped inside. The smell of aftershave, hair oil, and talcum powder clung to the air. The shop was alive with conversation voices rising, laughter punctuated by sighs, the buzz of clippers underscoring every word. "Zeke Carter," called out Big Ron, the barber, his belly pressed against the chair as he leaned in with clippers. "Ain't seen you in here in a minute. Grab a seat, brother." Ezekiel nodded, sliding into a corner chair. Men looked up briefly, then returned to their debates: basketball, politics, the price of gas. But when Ezekiel cleared his throat, the room quieted. "I need to ask you all something," he said. The air shifted. In barbershops, words carried weight. "What's going on, Zeke?" asked Big Ron, clicking off his clippers. Ezekiel rubbed a hand over his jaw. "HOA has been on me. Showed up at my farm, talking about buying my land. I said no. Now I'm hearing machines at night, fresh dirt piles showing up. I think they're digging tunnels under my fields." The younger men exchanged glances, chuckles slipping out. "Tunnels, for real?" one asked, half smiling. But the older men didn't laugh. Silence pressed heavy, and Ezekiel noticed the way their eyes darkened. Mr. Lewis, the shop's elder, leaned forward in his chair. His voice was low, gravelly. "Son, you sure you want to pull at that thread?" "I don't have a choice," Ezekiel replied. "It's my land, my father's land." Lewis sighed. "HOA has been at this for years. You ain't the first. They don't come with fire and chains no more. They come with paper, court summons, late fees. Folks lose their land without ever stepping inside a courtroom. Big Ron set his clippers down, folding his arms. Remember, the Johnsons had that house by the lake. HOA fined M for a shed being too close to the neighbor's line. Fined M till they couldn't keep up. Next thing gone. House sold at auction. And the Millers. Another man added. White family, sure, but poor. HOA wanted their lot for a parking expansion. Claimed their roof wasn't in compliance. Bled M dry in legal fees. Same playbook. Ezekiel leaned forward, heat rising in his chest. So, you're saying this is normal? Not normal, Ron corrected. Strategic. And when the family's black, oh, they turn the screws harder. Because they know we don't always got the cushion to fight back. Ezekiel's voice cracked. So what do I do? Just let them take it. The shop fell silent. Men avoided his eyes, each wrestling with their own history of compromise and resistance. Finally, Lewis spoke, his gaze sharp. Listen, son, my daddy told me something once. He said, survival means knowing when to keep your head down, but dignity means knowing when to lift it back up. The words sank deep. One of the younger men muttered, but standing up gets you crushed. Lewis nodded slowly. Sometimes, but silence is slow death. That land of yours, that's proof. Proof your people made it, held on when others couldn't. That's why they want it. Not just the acres, the history. Ezekiel stared at the floor, voice low. My daddy's buried under that soil. They think I'll just walk away. Ron put a heavy hand on his shoulder. Zeke, you fight, you better be ready. They'll smear you, call you unstable, violent, dangerous. They'll twist the story till the world don't recognize you. I don't care, Ezekiel said. His jaw was set, eyes burning. Let M twist. I ain't selling. Not today, not ever. The room buzzed again, men murmuring, some nodding, others shaking their heads. The tension of history filled the space. Generations who had fought, generations who had folded. Lewis lifted his cane, tapping it against the floor for silence. Then you fight smart. Collect proof. Don't go alone. And remember, land is power. They'll never hand it to you. You'll have to guard it like it's your last breath. Ezekiel rose, the barbershop's mirror, reflecting his steady stance. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room. I won't let them bury my family's story under concrete. They can dig all they want. I'll be waiting. The men exchanged looks, some doubtful, some proud, but the current had shifted. His defiance filled the air like a storm gathering as he stepped back into the sunlight. The narration closed in, firm and unflinching. In places like this, truth survived in whispers. Warnings passed in barbershops and kitchens, where history was memory and memory was weapon. Ezekiel had heard enough. Silence would not save him. Only resistance would. And with that, the path forward was set. The county clerk's office smelled of dust and copier ink. Ezekiel sat at a computer terminal, squinting at rows of scanned permits and deeds. He'd been here all morning, following a paper trail that seemed designed to confuse. Then there it was, a construction permit, filed under a shell company. The signature at the bottom, Harold Collins Jr., Ezekiel's pulse quickened. Collins, the HOA president's cousin, he whispered to himself. Got you. He printed copies, stuffing them into a folder. The clerk gave him a bored glance, uninterested in whatever battle he was fighting. But Ezekiel felt the weight of a weapon in his hands, not steel, but proof. That night, he parked his truck a mile from his fields, cutting the engine. The sky was moonless. He walked the rest of the way, flashlight tucked in his pocket, camera hanging around his neck. He crouched low when he saw the equipment, backhoes and generators. Tarps pulled over them like sleeping beasts. Fresh tracks crisscrossed the dirt, heavy wheels gouging the ground. Then he heard voices. Collins says we'll be done in a week, one man muttered, his voice carrying in the night. About time. I hate crawling around in that damn tunnel. Ezekiel crept closer, belly low to the ground. The men's shadows stretched long under the work lights. You think the farmer knows? Another asked. A chuckle. Doesn't matter if he does. Man's stubborn, but he'll fold. They always do. HOAS never lost a fight. Collins said the tunnel will let us reroute the utilities. Once that's done, his property value tanks. Then they can fine him till he can't breathe. Laughter, boot scuffing. A lighter flicked Ezekiel's heart, hammered. They weren't just trespassing, they were sabotaging him, destroying his livelihood with surgical precision. He raised his camera and snapped photos. The click sounded thunderous in the night, but the workers kept talking, oblivious. You hear what Collins said about the guy? One asked. voice dripping with disdain. Yeah, called him a mule, too stupid to know when he's beat. Man's still farming like it's 1950. Thinks sweat's gonna pay the bills. Ain't no place for folks like him in Hillside. Their laughter burned in Ezekiel's ears. He clenched his teeth so hard, his jaw ached. Another man added, "Don't worry, they'll grind him down. Black farmers don't last. Haven't you seen the stats? System takes care of it for us." Ezekiel's hands trembled on the camera. He snapped another photo, then another. Proof. He needed proof. But then a flashlight beam cut across the dirt. "Hey!" Ezekiel froze. One of the men squinted toward the shadows. "You see something?" "Nah," the other muttered. "Probably a deer." The beam swept dangerously close to Ezekiel's crouched figure. His breath caught, sweat dripped into his eyes. "Better not be that farmer snooping around," one said, spitting. "Collins'll skin us if we let him catch us." "Nah, man, he's too scared. They all are." The beam moved away. Laughter rose again, careless and cruel. Ezekiel's muscles slowly unclenched. He backed away, inch by inch, then turned and slipped into the tree-line. By the time he reached his truck, his chest was tight with fury. He sat in the cab, folder of permits on the seat beside him, camera clutched in his hands. He whispered into the dark, "They think I'm scared. They think I'll fold. Not me." The narration cut in like a steady drumbeat. This was their arrogance, believing silence meant weakness, believing history had broken him like it broke others. But silence was strategy, and strategy was survival. He looked out over the dark horizon, his land trembling with hidden tunnels. "I'll show them," he muttered. "I'll drag them into the light." 2 days later, Ezekiel stood outside the HOA office again, folder under his arm, camera slung over his shoulder. The receptionist frowned. "Do you have an appointment, Mr. Carter?" "No," he said, "but they'll want to see me." Collins appeared moments later, smirk plastered on his face. "Back again. Didn't I tell you not to waste your time here?" Ezekiel held up the folder. "I've got permits with your cousin's name on them, and photos of your men. On my land, digging tunnels." The smirk slipped for half a second, just a flicker, but Ezekiel caught it. Collins chuckled, regaining composure. "You think you've uncovered something? Paperwork, pictures? Please. Anyone can forge documents, and trespassing onto private construction sites. Careful, Carter. That's illegal." Ezekiel stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Illegal is what you're doing. I've got enough to bury you." Collins leaned close, his breath sour. "You don't get it, do you? This is bigger than you, bigger than your farm. We've been at this game for decades. You're just another obstacle, and obstacles get removed." Ezekiel didn't flinch. "Then you better start digging deeper, 'cause I'm not moving." As he walked out of the office, his hands shook not from fear, but from rage. The narration pressed tight against his thoughts. They were right about one thing. This was bigger than him, but they had forgotten history's lesson. The soil remembers, and so does the man who tends it. That night, he spread the permits and photos across his kitchen table. Evidence stared back at him, lines, signatures, faces caught in harsh light. Proof of betrayal, of theft, of contempt. He whispered to the empty room. To the ghosts of his father and grandfather, "I've got them now. I just need the world to see." The farmhouse was silent, but the soil outside seemed to breathe with him, waiting for the moment of reckoning. The county administration building was a maze of beige hallways and fluorescent hums. Ezekiel sat outside the zoning office, folder of permits in his lap, camera dangling from his hand. He had rehearsed his words all night, simple, direct, undeniable. When his name was called, he stepped inside. Behind the desk sat a man in a gray suit, hair thinning, eyes already impatient. His nameplate read Mr. Harmon, County Development Supervisor. "So, Mr. Carter," Harmon said, without looking up from his monitor, "you filed a complaint." "Yes, sir," Ezekiel replied, steady. "I've got proof the HOA has been digging tunnels under my land, without permission, without permits." Harmon sighed, tapping keys. "I see you've brought paperwork." Ezekiel opened the folder, spreading the permits and photos. "These signatures belong to the HOA president's cousin, and here photos of their equipment, their men, at night, on my soil." Finally, Harmon looked up. His smile was thin, bureaucratic. "Mr. Carter, I appreciate your concern, but what you've shown me here doesn't prove illegal activity. Construction companies often lease nearby land. As for the photos, well, could be anywhere." Ezekiel's voice sharpened. "That's my land. My fence line is right there in the picture. You telling me you don't see it?" Harmon leaned back, folding his hands. I'm telling you that evidence can be misinterpreted. Courts prefer clarity. You have no court order, no surveyor's affidavit, no notarized witness. Ezekiel slammed his palm against the desk. You want them to steal the whole damn farm before you lift a finger. The clerk's eyes flickered half fear, half annoyance. Mr. Carter, lower your voice. Threatening behavior won't help your case. Now, if you'd like, you can file a civil complaint, pay the fees, hire counsel. But I warn you, these cases take years. Expensive years. Ezekiel's jaw locked. He gathered his papers, stuffing them back into the folder. So you'll do nothing. Not without the proper process. Harmon's tone was clipped. Final. The HOA office smelled of fresh paint and polished wood. That afternoon, Ezekiel found himself standing in front of the board, again Collins' pearl earrings, slick hair, all seated like judges in their private courtroom. Collins grinned. Well, Mr. Carter, I hear you've been busy. County office already called us, said you came waving pictures around. Passionate, aren't you? Ezekiel's grip tightened on the folder. You can laugh all you want. I've got proof. Pearl earrings tilted her head, feigning sympathy. Proof of what, exactly? I see some blurry photos, some dirt. Equipment could belong to anyone. You've got quite the imagination. Slick hair leaned forward, smirking. Careful, now. Spreading false accusations, that's defamation. We could sue. Ezekiel's eyes narrowed. Sue me for defending my own land. Collins chuckled, tapping the table with one finger. Oh, Ezekiel, it's not about land, it's about compliance. And we both know your property isn't exactly up to standard. What standards? Ezekiel shot back. Paint on your barn's peeling. Fencing isn't regulation height. You've got an unregistered shed. Collins ticked the points off casually, as if reciting a grocery list. Pearl earrings chimed in sweetly. Technically, we could fine you for every violation. A few $100s each, per month. Add it up, it gets steep. Slick hair leaned back, smiling wide. And if you can't pay, well, foreclosures, not unheard of. We'd hate to see that happen, of course. The room filled with their laughter, smooth, practiced, cruel. Ezekiel's voice trembled with rage. You want me gone, say it plain. Collins's smile froze. His eyes hardened. Fine, we don't want you here. You don't fit. And sooner or later, you'll leave whether you want to or not. Silence burned between them. Ezekiel's voice was low, steel beneath it. My father's buried under that soil. You'll have to drag me off before I sell you 1 acre. Collins leaned forward, whispering, then I suggest you start packing, because when the papers come, you won't win. Men like you never do. That night, Ezekiel sat at his kitchen table, folder spread open, head in his hands. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. The front door creaked. His mother, May Carter, stepped in, her cane tapping softly on the floor. She set down a basket of food and studied her son's face. What's wrong, Zeke? He didn't look up. They've got me cornered. Mama County won't help. HOAs, threatening fines, lawsuits, foreclosure. They've got money, lawyers, power. I can't beat them. May's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. You think your daddy didn't face worse? White banks tried to take this land from him in the 70s, told him a black man couldn't farm and make a living, but he fought. Every season, every harvest, he fought. Ezekiel's throat tightened. And what did it get him? A heart attack at 55. May placed her hand on his. It got him this. She pointed out the window, where the fields stretched into darkness. It got him roots. Roots he passed to you. You think that soil don't remember his sweat, his blood. That's why they want it, because it's proof we were here, proof we endured. Tears burned in Ezekiel's eyes. He gripped her hand. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You don't need to be strong enough for the whole world, she whispered. Just strong enough to take one more step. Then, another. That's how your father did it. That's how I did it. And that's how you'll do it. Ezekiel swallowed hard. They won't stop, Mama. They'll come harder now. Then you stand harder, she said simply. Her words anchored him. Heavy as stone, steady as the earth itself. Later, as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Ezekiel whispered into the dark, they think paper walls will cage me. They think steel doors will stop me. But my roots run deeper. They'll see. The narration pressed in, echoing like a vow. He had no choice but to fight. To protect the land was to protect memory, dignity, existence itself. And Ezekiel Carter was not ready to be erased. The Hillside Community Center smelled of polished floors and burnt coffee. Folding chairs lined the room, filled with homeowners in neat polos and floral blouses. At the front, a long table sat the HOA board Collins in his navy jacket, pearl earrings with her tight smile, slick hair lounging like he owned the place. Ezekiel stood in the back, folder under his arm, palms sweating. His mother's words echoed, one more step, then another. Collins banged the gavel. Meeting is now in session. First item, budget allocation for landscaping. The room buzzed with polite chatter. Ezekiel's chest burned. He raised his hand. Mr. Carter. Collins's voice oozed sarcasm. Something to add about landscaping. Ezekiel stepped forward. Steady, I've got something to add about tunnels. The room stilled. Whispers rippled like wind in dry grass. Collins chuckled. Tunnels, please, enlighten us. Ezekiel strode to the front, dropped the folder on the table. Paper spilled across the wood. Permits, photos, maps. Your board's been digging under my land, without permission, without right. Here's proof. Permits in your cousin's name. Photos of your men, your equipment. Plans to reroute utilities and destroy my property value. Pearl earrings reached delicately for the papers. Flipping through, these look inconclusive. Anyone can doctor photos these days. Slick hair leaned forward, smirking. Sounds like a conspiracy theory. You sure you're not imagining things? Carter. Ezekiel's voice rose, clear and cutting. Imagining things. The ground's sinking on my land. I've heard your machines at night. I've got witnesses. You think because I'm a black farmer you can dismiss me as crazy, paranoid, unstable. That playbook's older than this county. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. An older white man whispered to his wife, "Is it true?" Collins slammed the gavel. Out of order. This meeting is not the place for wild accusations. Ezekiel's fists slammed the table. This is the place. You sit here, pretending to serve the community, while you bleed it dry. Folks, ask yourselves who benefits when the HOA swallows up land. Who profits? Certainly not you. The crowd stirred uneasily. Some nodded, others looked away. Pearl earrings kept her smile fixed. Mr. Carter, please calm down. Your anger isn't helping your case. My anger, Ezekiel shot back, comes from generations of theft. My father told me men like you would come smiling, offering deals, then come threatening, with paper and fines. And when that fails, you dig under the ground itself. Well, I'm done being polite. A woman in the audience raised her hand. Is this true, Mr. Collins? Are there tunnels? Collins sneered. Absolutely not. This man is trying to distract from his own violations. Barn in disrepair, fencing out of code. He's hoping to paint himself as a victim. Victim? Ezekiel laughed bitterly. You want to talk about code? My barn fed families. My fence holds cattle. Your code is a weapon. Paper shackles. You find people until they break, then you take their land. I'm not the first you've done it to, but I'll be the last. The room erupted. Whispers, debates, a few claps from the back row. Collins's face reddened. He leaned across the table, hissing, "You're making a mistake, Carter." Ezekiel leaned in, too, their eyes locked. No, the mistake is yours, thinking I'd stay quiet. After the meeting adjourned in chaos, Ezekiel stepped outside into the cool night air. He hadn't made it 10 feet before 3 board members followed. Collins at the front, smile gone. You're done, Collins growled. You think you embarrassed us in there? You just signed your own eviction notice. Pearl Earring's voice was sharp now, venom beneath the silk. We'll bury you in fines. We'll drown you in paperwork until you can't breathe. Slick hair cracked his knuckles. Or maybe we'll let the sheriff handle you. Folks get rowdy. They end up in cuffs. Wouldn't be hard to paint you as dangerous. Ezekiel stood tall, shoulders squared. You can try. You can write your fines, file your lawsuits, call your sheriff, but the truth's out now. People heard me. People are asking questions. Collins jabbed a finger at him. Questions don't matter. We control the answers. Ezekiel's lips curled into a hard smile. Not this time. They stared at each other in the parking lot, tension thick as smoke. Finally, Collins turned, muttering curses, the others following. Ezekiel stood alone under the streetlight, heart racing but unbroken. As he drove home, headlights cutting through the dark, narration coiled around his thoughts like fire. He had drawn the line. No more silence, no more shadows. The board could threaten, could mock, could bury him in paper, but fire burns through paper, and the fire inside Ezekiel Carter had only just begun. The night was moonless, the air thick with silence. Ezekiel parked his truck by the tree line, headlights off. He slung a flashlight and camera over his shoulder. boots crunching softly on the dirt. The sinkhole near his pasture had widened evidence of the hollow ground beneath. Tonight, he would see with his own eyes. He crouched, prying open the plywood cover left behind by careless workers. A gust of damp, stale air rushed up, smelling of mud and diesel. Ezekiel muttered to himself, one step at a time. He lowered himself down the ladder, boots landing on packed soil. The tunnel stretched in both directions, timber beams, power cables strung along the ceiling, faint light bulbs flickering at intervals. His flashlight beam cut through the dark. He snapped photos, cables, generators, maps, spray painted on the walls. Proof, real, undeniable proof. Voices echoed down the tunnel. Male voices, sharp, impatient. Ezekiel killed his light, pressing against the wall. Keep digging toward the south fence. One man said, Collins wants the line clear by next week. Another voice grumbled, dam ground's unstable. We're risking a collapse. Not our problem. HOA pays, we dig. Their footsteps grew louder. Ezekiel's pulse hammered in his ears. He slid deeper into the shadows, holding his breath. The men passed, pushing wheelbarrows of dirt. Never seeing him, Ezekiel whispered, gotcha. He raised the camera, snapping a quick photo of their faces. But the flash slipped on. A sharp burst of light filled the tunnel. One worker shouted, who's there? Ezekiel cursed under his breath and ran. Boots pounded behind him. The tunnel twisted, beams groaning overhead. Dirt showered down as he sprinted. He spotted a side chamber duct inside, pressing his back to the wall. The workers' voices boomed. You see him? No, but someone's down here. Grab him before Collins finds out. Their footsteps faded in the opposite direction. Ezekiel exhaled, heart rattling. He flicked his flashlight back on, scanning the chamber. What he saw froze him. Steel cabinets, rolled blueprints, and inside a crate stacks of files marked Property Acquisition Confidential. He opened one, pages of maps, addresses, homeowner names, dozens of families targeted, notes scribbled in the margins. Foreclose, demolish, redevelop. His own name circled in red ink. Ezekiel whispered, voice trembling, this ain't just me, they're taking everything. He stuffed documents into his bag, snapping more photos. The rumble of footsteps returned closer this time. Shadows stretched across the chamber. There, a voice barked. Ezekiel grabbed the camera and bolted. Dirt sprayed under his boots as he tore down the tunnel. A hand brushed his shoulder, but he shoved the man off, ducking under a low beam. Stop him. Flashlights flared behind him, beams stabbing through the dark. Ezekiel's breath came ragged, lungs burning. He spotted the ladder ahead, a pale rectangle of night sky above. The workers closed in. One lunged, grabbing his jacket. Ezekiel spun, slamming an elbow into the man's ribs. The worker stumbled back, cursing. Ezekiel climbed, muscles screaming, fingers slipping on the rungs. Get him. Hands clawed at his boot, but he kicked free, hauling himself onto the grass. He rolled onto the dirt, gasping for air. Below, the workers shouted in fury. One began climbing, but Ezekiel yanked the plywood lid and shoved a heavy stone on top, sealing the opening. Silence, only his ragged breathing filled the night. He staggered to his truck, bag clutched tight, heart still racing. The weight of the documents pressed against his chest. This is it, he whispered. The truth they can't bury. But the narration was sharp, warning, relentless. The shadows had seen him. The hunters knew their prey now. And though he carried the evidence, he carried danger too. Ezekiel Carter was no longer just a nuisance. He was a target. He started the truck, headlights cutting through the dark road home. Unaware of the figure watching from the distance, Collins himself, cigarette glowing, smile cold as steel. Collins flicked the ash to the ground. Let's see how long you last, Carter. The church basement buzzed with voices. Folding chairs filled every corner. Neighbors pressed shoulder to. Some were curious, some fearful, others angry. At the front, Ezekiel stood with his bag of documents, heart pounding like a drum. Pastor Williams raised a hand. Brothers, sisters, we're gathered here because Ezekiel Carter has something urgent to share, something that affects not just him but all of us. Murmurs rippled. Ezekiel stepped forward. He set the bag on the table and unzipped it. These, he said, pulling out files, are the HOA's plans, not rumors, not guesses. Their own words, their own maps. He held up a page, bold red circle around his farm. They're tunneling under my land. I've seen it myself, but it doesn't stop with me. Look. He spread the files across the table, dozens of addresses circled, families, names, everyone in the room recognized. They plan to fine you, drown you in debt, seize your homes, turn this community into their playground for profit. And if you fight, they'll do to you what they did to Madig under you, laugh in your face, call you crazy, gasps, mutters, curses. An older woman clutched her husband's arm. That's our address. A younger man frowned. You're saying they want all our land? Ezekiel's voice rang out. Yes, piece by piece, until nothing's left that belongs to us. A man in the crowd stood Mr. Jenkins, who ran the barber shop. I told y'all months ago something wasn't right. Carter's been fighting alone. We should have stood with him sooner. Another voice, trembling with fear. But if we speak up, won't they crush us harder? They got lawyers, judges, the sheriff on their side. Ezekiel met the man's eyes. They've got money. They've got power. But what they don't have is truth. And they sure don't have all of us together. That's what they fear most. A woman spoke up, her voice steady. Then we go to the news. Make it public. Pastor Williams nodded slowly. The light breaks, chains. But the question is, are we ready to pay the cost? Because once this comes out, there's no going back. The back doors creaked open. Collins strolled in, flanked by pearl earrings and slick hair. The room fell silent. Well, Collins said smoothly. What a gathering. Mr. Carter, holding court like a preacher. He stepped closer, lips curling. Careful. You might confuse these good people with your little stories. Ezekiel's jaw clenched. Not stories, evidence. He shoved the papers forward. Your signatures. Your maps. Your men caught on camera. You can't deny it. Collins picked up a file, flipping it open casually. Then he laughed, tossing it back on the table. Forged. All of it. This is slander, Carter. You think anyone outside this basement will believe a word? Pearl Earrings stepped forward, her tone syrupy sweet. Neighbors, please, don't let one man's bitterness poison your trust. The HOA exists to protect this community. Someone shouted from the crowd. Protect us from what? From living in our own homes. Another voice. Why's my address in those papers? Then the crowd's murmur swelled, anger replacing fear. Collins's smile faltered. Enough. This meeting isn't sanctioned. Disperse, before I have you all fined for unauthorized use of property. Ezekiel slammed his fist on the table. There it is. Threats, paper chains. But listen, he raised his voice over the murmurs. They can't fine all of us if we refuse to pay. They can't silence all of us if we speak together. They've built their power on our fear. Break that, and they've got nothing. The crowd erupted in shouts of agreement. That's right, we're tired of this. No more fines. Collins barked, quiet, but the noise only rose. Slick Hair stepped forward, sneering. You think you're brave, Carter. This is suicide. We'll bury you in court, and when we're done, you'll be another broke black farmer on the street. Ezekiel faced him, eyes blazing. I've seen broke black farmers before. I've buried kin who lost everything to men like you, but I ain't letting it happen again. Not here. Not now. Pearl Earrings hissed. You'll regret this. No, Ezekiel shot back. You will. The crowd cheered, voices rising in defiance. Collins's face twisted, mask slipping. He slammed his fist against the doorframe. You're finished, Carter. All of you. He stormed out, his cronies following. Silence hung heavy in the room after they left. Ezekiel turned back to his neighbors. They're scared, he said softly. That's why they came. Scared of the truth, scared of us. So what do we do now? Pastor Williams raised his hand, voice strong. We stand together. Tomorrow morning, we call the news. We call every outlet that'll listen. We march to the courthouse with these files in our hands. No more hiding, no more fear. Applause broke out, shaking the walls. Ezekiel closed his eyes. The fire inside him steady now. The narration rolled like thunder. Chains break not with paper or steel, but with voices raised together. The night of shadows was ending. Morning was coming, and with it, justice's first light. The courthouse steps were alive with noise reporters clustering with cameras, microphones flashing like lightning. A sea of neighbors held signs. Our homes are not for sale, and stop HOA corruption. At the front, Ezekiel stood with Pastor Williams and Mr. Jenkins at his side. The documents were clutched in his hands, copies already sent to every journalist within reach. A reporter shoved a mic forward. Mr. Carter, is it true the HOA has been illegally tunneling under private land? Ezekiel's voice rang out, firm, steady. It's true. I've walked those tunnels myself. I've seen the machines, the blueprints, and I've got proof right here. He held up the files. This isn't just about Mitts, about every family they've tried to bleed dry. Shouts of agreement roared from the crowd. Another reporter asked, "What do you hope will come from today?" Ezekiel looked out over the crowd. Justice, and an end to their lies. Inside the courtroom, the HOA board sat at the defense table. Collins in a tailored suit, jaw tight, pearl earrings, wore a stiff smile, though sweat glistened on her temple. Slick hair tapped his pen furiously against the table. Judge Ramirez presided, gavel resting like a weapon in her hand. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, we present evidence of unlawful excavation, fraudulent permits, and conspiracy to seize private property." He laid the files on the table. Ezekiel's photographs projected onto a screen, the signed documents displayed for all to see. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as names and addresses flashed. The prosecutor's voice sharpened. This wasn't negligence. It was deliberate, a scheme to strip homeowners of land and funnel it into private development projects controlled by the HOA leadership. Collins whispered furiously to his lawyer, face pale. When it was Collins's turn to speak, he rose, voice dripping with false calm. "Your Honor, this is all a fabrication by a disgruntled homeowner. Mr. Carter is a man with a history of code violations. His word cannot be trusted." Ezekiel stood. "May I speak, Your Honor?" Judge Ramirez nodded. Ezekiel walked to the front, holding up his camera. "I don't ask you to take my word. I ask you to look." He clicked through the photos, workers pushing dirt in wheelbarrows, generators humming, blueprints marked in red. Then the final shot, his own name circled on a document, labeled acquisition pending. His voice shook but did not falter. "This isn't just my fight, it's every person whose home was marked for theft. Every neighbor threatened with fines and foreclosure. Every family told they didn't belong. I won't be silent, and I won't be erased." The gallery erupted in applause until the judge's gavel thundered for silence. Pearl earrings rose, voice sharp, desperate. "Your Honor, those signatures could be forged." The photos doctored. The prosecutor cut her off, slamming another file onto the table. "Funny, because the county registrar confirmed these permits trace back to your cousin, Mrs. Leland, and the construction company on payroll, owned by Mr. Collins's brother-in-law." The room gasped again. Collins's face drained of color. He stammered, "That's irrelevant." Judge Ramirez's voice was cold steel. "It is very relevant." Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing. The prosecutor delivered the final blow. "Your Honor, this is more than corruption. It is theft. It is fraud. It is racism, weaponized through bureaucracy and intimidation. We demand full accountability." Collins slammed his fist on the table. "This is a witch hunt." Ezekiel's voice cut through. Resolute. "No, this is the truth catching up to you." Hours later, the verdict was read. Injunctions filed, assets frozen, federal investigators called. The HOA board members sat in stunned silence, their empire crumbling like sand outside. The courthouse steps erupted in cheers. Neighbors hugged, signs waved high, reporters shouted questions. Ezekiel stood at the top of the stairs, shoulders heavy but unbroken. Pastor Williams clapped his back. "You did it, son." Ezekiel shook his head. "No, we did it. Together." A child tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Carter, does this mean they can't take our house?" Ezekiel crouched down, smiling softly. "That's exactly what it means." As the sun set, the narration rolled in quiet thunder. The house of cards had fallen, paper walls torn, steel doors broken. For once, power bent beneath truth. And though the scars of the fight would remain, so too would the roots Ezekiel fought to protect. Deep, unyielding, eternal. The farm was quiet in the dawn light. Dew clung to the grass. The soil smelled rich and alive. Ezekiel stood at the fence line, hands resting on the wood, eyes scanning the fields his father had once walked. The land seemed to breathe with him, wounded but unbroken. Behind him, a steady shuffle of feet. Neighbors carried boards, nails, tools. Children laughed, chasing each other in the yard. The old barn, weathered and peeling, was being mended plank by plank, not by one man's hands but by many. Mr. Jenkins hammered a nail, grinning. "Told you, Zeke, whole town's behind you now." Ezekiel shook his head, humbled. "Didn't think I'd live to see it." Pastor Williams raised his voice from the porch. "This is what they feared." Neighbors, standing shoulder to shoulder. "Fear kept us silent, but truth broke the chains. Now we build again." May Carter sat in her rocking chair, cane at her side, watching with quiet pride. Ezekiel knelt beside her. "You were right, Mama. One step at a time." She touched his cheek, eyes misty. Your daddy would have been proud. You carried the fight further than he ever could. That's the harvest. Zeke, not just corn, not just cattle, but dignity, freedom, roots that'll feed generations. Ezekiel swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I almost gave up, but you didn't, she whispered. And now look. She nodded at the crowd, hammering, painting, singing hymns as they worked. Children gathered near the edge of the field, planting young saplings where the earth had sunk. A boy asked Ezekiel, "Will these trees grow big?" He crouched, pressing a hand into the soil. "Bigger than you can imagine. Roots run deep when they're planted with care." The boy smiled, patting the dirt around the sapling. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, the community shared food around a long wooden table set in the yard. Plates of fried chicken, cornbread, collard greens. Laughter rose into the night, mixing with the hum of crickets. Slick hair and pearl earrings were nowhere to be seen, facing charges, stripped of their power. Collins's name filled headlines now, no longer a man of influence but a symbol of greed undone. Neighbors toasted with sweet tea in mason jars, two standing together. One shouted, "To Ezekiel," another added, But Ezekiel stood, shaking his head. "Not to me, to all of us, to this land, and to the roots that hold us here. They tried to erase us, but we remain." The table erupted in cheers. When night fell quiet again, Ezekiel walked alone to the family plot at the far edge of the farm. He knelt by his father's grave, pressing his palm against the headstone. "Daddy," he whispered, "we won. They tried to take it all, but the land's still ours. I carried it like you told me. I didn't let go." The wind stirred, rustling the grass, as if answering. Ezekiel closed his eyes, breathing deep. The fight had left scars on him, on the land, on the people. But victory had left something stronger, roots unshaken. The narration flowed like a hymn. Land can be stolen, papers can be forged, power can lie, but roots remain. They hold memory, dignity, and the unbreakable truth that no hand can erase. Ezekiel Carter had guarded those roots, and through him, the land would live, free, unyielding, eternal.